Well, good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. Hey, thank you. My name is Jonathan Iderach. I'm the board for Together for Timnath, also the pastor at Timnath Presbyterian here in town, and it's my privilege to welcome you tonight to our first forum for 2025, and to welcome our guests, Jason Genck from BerryDunn, and our very own Tom Casal from here in Timnath. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. It's always good to see familiar faces at these events and new faces, and we're really grateful for you coming out to be engaged in the civic life of our town and to build up a stronger community together. If this is your first time, hopefully you've signed in so we can get a little information from you to keep you connected to other events that we'll be hosting all throughout the year. As we get started, I just kind of want to recap Together for Timnath's mission and vision if you've never been to one of our events before. We hope to advance Timnath's downtown district as the heart of our greater Timnath community by promoting community-oriented economic, cultural, and social development, advocating as a unified and influential voice for downtown or Old Town, and fostering an active, informed, and connected community throughout all of Timnath. And we envision Timnath's downtown district as, hopefully soon, a vibrant and distinctive hub of celebrated and supported economic, cultural, and social opportunity for our whole town. Just want to note, for the benefit of those who are not able to be here tonight but are interested in this conversation, we are going to be recording this event and we'll be posting it on our Facebook and YouTube channel, which reminds me, if you aren't already following us on Facebook or Instagram, you should do so. You can stay connected to other things that we'll be hosting throughout the year. Couple announcements before we get started. One is, way back in October, we hosted this event called Bluesberry and Jam. We had a wonderful band, Charlie Brown Sweater Face, rocking our faces off, really great food, and we just want to thank all of you who supported that fundraising event for us. And we didn't get a chance to do so because we didn't get to hold our November event last year. So we're really grateful for that, as well as the continued support or year-end support that you've given to the mission of Together for Timnath. Thank you. It always makes a difference for us. Also want to note that next month, our February forum is going to be coming up at the very end of the month, February 20th at 6:30, again here in the town hall. And we are finally going to get that conversation with Scott Robinson and Justin Stone, who are Timnath's first in-house directors of community development and public works. So there'll be a great conversation with some of the staff here at Timnath. I don't think there are any other announcements, right, Wade? So that means we can get down to it. So our guests again tonight are Tom Casal, the Parks and Rec Director here in Timnath. Longmont native, right, Tom? Tom was Fruita's recreation superintendent before moving back to Northern Colorado in 2023 to lead Timnath's Park and Rec department. We're really grateful to have him here. And then Jason Genck is a senior manager at BerryDunn and a practice lead in BerryDunn's Parks, Rec, and Library practice with more than 25 years in leadership in parks, recreation, and library administration. He joined BerryDunn in 2021 with a desire to help people, to help organizations, and to help communities throughout the nation. So for both of our guests, would you please give them a warm welcome? Thanks for being here. So tonight is going to flow like this. Jason is actually going to offer a 20 to 25 minute presentation on the future of Timnath's parks, recreation, and open spaces, and the ways that BerryDunn has engaged the town and the residents in the master planning process. That's going to be followed then by a few questions from me to Tom and to Jason. And then finally, we'll engage questions from all of you. And the way that's going to work best is hopefully you got one of these question cards when you came in. And if you haven't already turned in a question to me, because you're waiting to listen to the conversation, when you write down a question, if you just want to hold that up one of our volunteers will come by and grab that from you so they can be collected, and then we'll be able to ask, hopefully, many of those questions at the end of the program tonight, and engage in a good conversation together. So without further ado, you guys take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you for such a nice introduction. I'm Jason Genck with BerryDunn. I think the one thing that might have been missed is I'm a local. So maybe that counts for something?
Yeah.
I probably should have brought snacks. I was just saying, well, why do you, because I asked where the hors d'oeuvres, we're like, well, we're the guests, we should have brought them for you guys. But I live in Windsor. I shop here in Timnath. I recreate in Timnath. And so what an absolute special opportunity it is for me to serve as our practice lead, but also, I get to work on projects all over the country, which is so cool. But to do it right here in my backyard has been awesome. So just thank you for your coming out tonight, and thank you for all your work in helping lead and provide input for the future of Timnath. I tell you, your community has not been shy about input. It's been awesome. So warm and welcoming to, my entire team. And I'll give you some highlights there, but what a tremendous place to help plan your future. So I'll give you a brief overview. And you said 25 minutes? You told me before 2 hours and 25 minutes. I prepared 125 slides. Don't worry, guys, I didn't actually do that. So, Tom. So I am with BerryDunn. I've been a consultant now for 4 years, and BerryDunn is a national consulting firm in my practice that I get to serve with. Specializes in parks, recreation, libraries, open space, university planning, a whole bunch of other stuff. Most importantly, I get to serve as your project manager. And so I'm the main point of contact at BerryDunn to help lead this process for you. Kind of at a real high level, this is essentially what we're trying to do. Tom, this is your first ever, right? Your first ever plan for the Parks and Rec Department as far as master plan goes?
It's my first one here. They did one in 2011.
Okay.
When the community was much smaller.
Got it. And the idea is now that you're forming now your first ever department officially, because a lot of work has been done prior to this. This is such a pivotal time to really frame the priorities of the community, the priorities of the organization, and look for alignment. But kind of at a high level, this is what we're trying to do. Create flexibility and help map the next 10 years or so in Timnath, specifically in this case, parks, recreation, open space, trails, of course, come to mind. Again, at a very high level of our phases, and you're probably going to say, well, great, where are we at? We're about right there. We're about right there, looking to start wrapping up essentially right around March. Of course, depending on steps and process and whatnot, but kind of gives you an idea of sort of what we've been working on. And one of the highlights tonight we wanted to talk to you about is engagement, because we're still working through that phase. And so I certainly encourage you this evening, any questions you have, any things you'd like me to follow up on, I'd love to hear it all, because we're still taking all that in. As I said, your community has been fantastic in their input and giving their ideas. And as a matter of fact, at some of your events, and I'm going to show you all the locations you went to, I will tell you that at some of the events that we attended, like what I thought was going to be a small ice cream social, may have been the largest event that I've attended at BerryDunn to do engagement. And I mean, we serve cities as large as Phoenix, Salt Lake City, you name it. I mean, your community comes together around special events, and just got to tell you, it was fantastic. So, and of course, digital engagement. I was told by your partner, Slate Communications, that you have the most traffic of any client that they have for digital engagement. I don't know if you knew that. I didn't, but they told me that. So of course, we had a digital engagement exercise as well. I mean, it certainly served as one of the ways, but the best ways that we like to engage is going to the people, going to where the people are at, and not just our users. We want to talk to people that don't use the system and learn about opportunities that they're interested in. So we did have an interactive map exercise. I'm curious, how many folks had a chance to see that previously? Yes. So we really had an interactive map exercise, and you could put a pin anywhere in the community, and you could describe an improvement you want to see. You could find out what is your neighbor talking about as far as in your own neighborhood. And these are some of the things that we saw from that particular exercise. Trail connectivity is probably one of the biggest themes that we're seeing in Timnath. Possible land, open space, stewardship type of acquisition. Varying recreation center opportunities, such as needing indoor wellness opportunities. And a couple other questions were in there too, but definitely those were some of the highlights. Now again, that's just the one platform and one module. We did other things. We had an ideas wall where you can use a virtual sticky note and again, create different conversations with your community. And a lot of things here, here's an example about outdoor recreation and fishing pier opportunities at the lake. And other types of conversations that are occurring. But don't worry, when I get towards the end of this piece, I will summarize what those key findings are, okay? Hopefully you saw this image around the community. We worked hard with your team to try to find an identity that stood out, so people knew that this was about parks and recreation. And so we did our very best, and we of course track all of our sites. So for instance, those blue dots are showing yard signs, purple on areas that we did pop-ups and comment cards, green being specific pop-up locations we did with our staff, yellow on business outreach or materials and follow-up with business. Just gives you a quick idea. What we try to do is whenever we do planning community, we try to get the users, non-users, diverse groups, but we also try to map where we go to try to make sure we're hitting all parts of any community. So that's what we try to do. And there's some pretty cool images. Yeah, oops, sorry, was a delay. Some cool images of some of the things. Maybe you saw some of that. Maybe some of you were there at some of those activities. How many folks may have seen us, a tent or something from the work that we were, okay, there's some head nod. I remember we did, I don't know if it's on there, Walmart, yeah, there's Walmart, there we go, Costco, and as just another way, because we know how important that center is for a tax base and users and visitors and that sort of thing. Comment cards, there's my colleague Ryan Hegerness, who was supposed to be here this evening, but he was scared. I'm kidding, he's sick. Him and his family come down with an illness. He's not scared at all, but he was really working hard on your behalf. And that's an example of one of the pop-ups he did. He walked away, that's actual individual comment cards. And so of course we have to go back and enter all those. And I think I said earlier, your community was not shy about giving us input, which is awesome. So on those comment cards, you may say, well, what did they say? Well, by far, any topic of any outreach we did, regardless of type, it was about indoor recreation. People in Timnath want to have an opportunity to call something their home for indoor recreation. So a common feedback was, we'd like to have some indoor recreation opportunities in Timnath. But closely behind that is trail connectivity. You guys have done a wonderful job from a regional perspective, also from a policy standpoint, in my opinion, about how you've worked at development and how it's connecting to your main trails. Guys, a lot of communities around the states don't have that. They don't have that opportunity, and to get there is darn near impossible. So kudos to you guys for your team and your city, your town leadership for having that vision of wanting to continue to connect all of Timnath. And of course, nature areas and hiking trails are very popular as well. Aquatics and pools, there was interest in getting, and I know you have metro districts and HOAs that provide that, but we also know a number of your community members go elsewhere, which is fine. As far as providing services, they'll go to the Windsor Center, they'll go to Fort Collins, they'll go to Eaton, they'll go to other areas to recreate, and we can actually track that, which is pretty cool to see what is that real usage like. And then shade and shelter. The idea, especially in Colorado, this is very common. People want the opportunity of a little bit of a respite just to get out of the sun because it can beat down on you. As a matter of fact, guys, I think just going for a 30-minute walk today, I think I actually got sun. I was like, what am I doing? I just visited my parents. Where do you want to hear? I just got back from the Midwest, visited my parents, and didn't need to think about that day. It was freezing. Went for a walk today, and I think I got a little red on my neck. So anyway, where do you want to hear? But the idea around shade and shelter is very serious. People want to get out of the sun and have an opportunity to rest. And youth sports, you have already volunteer and nonprofit organizations. Sorry about that, involved in youth sports, and people would like to see more offerings with families and opportunities for youth sports. We also took an opportunity to identify focus groups. So hopefully you're seeing that we're doing the best we can to look at different ways to have different conversations. We do want to hear from special interest groups, but we want to hear from all groups just to get the very best engagement we can. And so we did one with the schools and sport leagues, and some of their findings were things like field space being a common issue. Can we partner further with other cities that are nearby? Can we balance more introductory and recreation opportunities with competitive to kind of have more access and and year-round opportunities. Trail connections is showing up yet again, in this case with schools, which I thought was awesome. The recreation center, we talked to different recreation centers in the region, and we talked about what they're seeing as trends and needs, and we're seeing pool and fitness and specific amenities that they're looking at. We also talked to people that are users of your programs and visit your events, and we got some great feedback there about things like, and you'll see another theme here, outdoor recreation, kayaks, use in the outdoors, trails, more events. And yet you guys do great events, but they want to see more of them. In fact, I remember one conversation I had, a new resident moved into the area, they said the events in the parks in our own HOAs or what have you are the identity of how I relate to Timnath. I found that very interesting. So, and that was just one takeaway, but people really like going to their local events and meeting all their neighbors, which is awesome. We had a reservoir focus group discussion, and we talked about trails of the reservoir. We talked about the balance of development, but certainly managing open space. And then we had an open discussion group, so kind of a catch-all to say, can we just talk to anyone, that any input whatsoever about Parks and Rec, supporters, non-supporters, that sort of thing, and got some additional feedback. The other thing we did is we were very pleased to staff with their commitment wanted to make sure that every opportunity was given to the community for a survey. So we did provide a Siskiyou Valley survey with our partner, ETC. What was really cool, something that I've actually never seen at BerryDunn before, every household in Timnath was given the opportunity to participate in the survey. I've never seen that. That's just usually, there's a target number and we exceeded that target, but it kind of gives you a breakdown of by the way, that breakout we're seeing is fantastic from a diversity as far as different age groups in this particular case. But we attempted to mail through our partner every house in Timnath a survey. Did anyone in this room get the survey? I'm just curious about Parks and Rec. I know it's been a little while, it might be hard to remember, but we did get 250 responses for the Siskiyou Valley survey, and 515 households did complete the survey, which is fantastic. Here again, just a quick summary. What did that survey indicate? Park utilization in Timnath is above the national average, so you guys are heavy users of your parks. There's significant support for high quality services of parks and recreation. Some top priorities are exercise and fitness, outdoor water-based activities, outdoor adventure opportunities. As far as amenity-wise, your community wants to see multi-use trails, biking, and walking opportunities. And yes, again, a strong desire for an indoor recreation center. Now, I went through engagement pretty quickly, and that's the most of the information I have for you this evening, but I want to reassure you, we're doing a ton of every stuff. We're pretty much doing every service that we can to support your community. So we are inventorying all your parks, looking at their conditions, looking at gaps in services, gaps in locations in your community. We're analyzing your trails and looking at recommendations for connectivity and improvement. We're looking at your overall market and users. We have ways of doing that to look at trends and needs. And certainly programs and services. We're studying that in relation to your survey feedback, your engagement feedback, your demographics, and all that fun stuff. And of course, we're also looking at the recreation center, since it came out of the gate as kind of one of the first things that the community really wanted to talk about. So we're looking at that as well. And from here, our next steps are that, as I mentioned, wrapping up at about March, but we still definitely want to hear feedback you have for sure. We have a board presentation tentatively in February, a draft presentation to the council in February, March, and final adoption in March. Now guys, this is very much target. Things happen, meetings get canceled, that sort of thing, but that's our goal as far as the overall schedule of where we're at now, where we're headed. So I don't think I took 2 hours and 25 minutes.
Not quite.
And I don't want it really quick, but I want to make sure I have time for your questions and really have some good conversations. So happy to go back to any slide you'd like, but definitely want to have these conversations. Tom, anything you'd like to add? I talk a mile a minute, you're like, Jason, I can't add anything, right?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. That's awesome. I'm going to actually come and join you down at the end here. Thank you. That was a lot. really fast. I don't know if anybody else felt that way, but it was a lot of information. It was a lot of really good information. So to start off, I guess, with questions, you noted all the ways that you sought to engage the community in the master planning process to get the feedback that you can create the master plan with. The question is, how influential will the findings ultimately be for the master plan, the outcomes? Or put another way, to what extent will the plan reflect your own expertise and best practices in community development versus a compilation of resident input?
Well, I think the projects that we have to take or the things that we want to move forward with are going to come from the action items that come out of this master plan. And we're going to be using the survey results and all the public engagement to come up with these action plans. Some will take a little bit of time to actually come to fruition, but I think, we did this master plan to engage the community to find out what they wanted. And so for us to put it back on the shelf and ignore that, that's a disservice to the community. So I think it's really important that we take all of this information and we move forward. Now, we are a smaller department and we'll have to prioritize, so we won't be able to get to everything all at once. I'd rather take the time to, single out certain projects. We know some projects are higher priority, as you saw, with some of the open space on there and the rec center type questions. So those are all things that we'll need to map out and prioritize moving forward. So I think without this plan, put it on the shelf would be a complete disservice. And I think what our community wants is something that's we should be providing. It's not nothing in there was not attainable by our community. So.
You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll just add, this is about Timnath, it's not about BerryDunn. And I think one of the reasons we were hired is because of actionable planning. All of our team members are previous practitioners, having run similar systems and different systems. So this is all about Timnath. So where I come in is to help from mission alignment and alignment of all the objectives and analysis to provide the very best opportunity to execute these actions. And so that's where sort of the facilitation and having the data and the metric to support some of these things. So for instance, if Tom is pursuing funding around grants, just making that up, he'll have all these metrics to pull in now that didn't have yesterday to say, look at this community support, this is truly a priority. Or the new conversations that may have been opened up from those discovery sessions. And I've seen that time and time again, where it's like, I didn't realize how I fit into Parks and Rec as a medical provider or whatever, now I do. So that's our idea, is to continue to move forward that momentum.
Thank you. Before the next question, just a reminder too, if you have questions that you've written down or write down in the next few minutes, if you want to just kind of give a motion to somebody in the corners of the room and they'll be able to bring them up here for us. But the next question is, from your experience, how important do you think, public gathering spaces are to the health and vibrancy of a community like Timnath? Sub-questions, how do they affect the way neighbors interact? Are there any negatives or challenges that we should think about to public spaces?
I'm not going to steal the director's thunder.
No, the public spaces are what brings the community together. It helps build the identity, having these community spaces and the events that bring people together. And I'm talking more of the local events. I'm trying to focus more on some of those local ones to really engage the community. A lot of the things that people remember when they're growing up is, those events that they go to in the parks or just the gathering spaces. And so I think community spaces are very important, and they need to be
Okay.
all right.
I kind of mentioned it earlier. I had conversations with your community members that live in Timnath that say, I connect to my neighbors in this park. It's great because this is how, because I had asked about the brand of Timnath, and I don't mean to have to force people into terms of branding or whatever, but they said, look, how I identify with my community is through getting together like gatherings like this. How many people did you have at the ice cream social? Felt like 9,000. But they said that's where they came together to meet people and to interact. And so I would say that whether that's outdoor, I see a lot of love here for passive opportunities like trails and open space and parks, but I think it's really, in my opinion, part of your identity. Being in Colorado, creating spaces for people to gather in the outdoors, for example, is always a priority for people that provide parks and recreation services. You asked, I think you said a challenge of that, is that correct?
Yeah.
A challenge would be loving these areas to death. You know, without adequate planning, I've seen systems time and time again neglect their systems. You know, it's always great to do a ribbon cutting for something that's shiny and new, but try to go back to something that, you know, try to justify funding and get excited about, you know, revitalization and building that replacement infill at a playground or replacing a ball field. Doesn't always get the love, but I tell you what I'm seeing more and more, and we do planning all over the country, is actually more priority on taking care of those things, that infrastructure. So loving it to death, based on, you have a higher use of your parks than I've seen in other systems across the United States, including throughout Colorado. So just be mindful. I don't, you know, I know, because we did an org assessment with you, limited staffing, I know you contract things, you depend heavily on other partners like Metro District, which is great, because there is no way that Timnath can provide, especially right now, all those services. So being mindful about what's that true cost of what you're providing.
And as we develop our system, making sure we diversify and move all throughout the town, not just have all the events at just one location. We got Wild Wing opening up, other areas that maybe come through here that we look to develop to create the gathering spaces, and just community spaces in general, whether it be, you know, we're already getting a lot of positive feedback from the recreation programming and the kids identifying as Timnath, wearing their Timnath jerseys versus having to go elsewhere. So I think having those public spaces is important. I think it's our job to make sure we diversify and make sure that we are moving around and not just having everything in one central location to make sure that we open it up to the entire community. Right now it's kind of hard with where kind of things are and the lands that we have to develop for public spaces, but you know, we're going to take information from this master plan and try to forge the plan to make sure that we are doing it.
So one example of a different community, which I won't name, in Colorado, I think 27 or 32 parks, and similar in a way when Timnath was starting. I'm not saying you're gonna get to that many parks, but all their parks were built at the same time. If you don't capitalize that out and stagger that over time, that bill for replacing all those parks and playgrounds is nuts. And then at the same time, their HOAs asked the town to take over all their parks, which was another 14 or 18. And there was definitely a public outcry about making sure that those playgrounds were replaced because they were way beyond replacement and the HOAs had no way to pay for them. So I love HOAs and I love every partner that provides great community benefits. So please don't get me wrong, but I've seen that tale before in a different town where you don't keep up and understand the long-term impacts.
So both of those comments are a great lead into the next question. So Old Town Timnath, or downtown Timnath, currently has 0 parks or community gathering spaces, despite being the historic center of the town. Why do you think that is? And what can we expect for the future of Parks and Rec in Old Town?
I can't really speak to the why of how come it is that way it is, but that's one of the things about moving forward is trying to find those opportunities to be able to create those spaces for them. Where we were and how we got there to have nothing down there. You know, we do have the school down there that has some playgrounds. Not saying that that's a park because that's run by the schools, but I think what I need to focus on is moving forward and bringing those things throughout the entire community, not just, you know, one central location. So looking at all of the options and make it is a priority to bring things through for the entire community. And not just keep things down on one side of town. So we are looking at that. I feel like I'm very, I'm aware. And so anything that we can do within this process, that's why I made it a very important step that when I met with Jason for the first time, I really wanted some of the community engagement to happen downtown. And told him to make it a priority, so that's why we did the farmers market. And did some other outreach down there. So yes, I don't know why, but all we can do is use this as a tool to fix that and to find a suitable location, but Old Town and all the other towns, making sure that we diversify all over Timnath.
I love your old town, and it takes me just 10 minutes to get here, so, in fact, I just want to put a plug in, I don't know if I should do that, but what's the name of the nursery that's right in Old Town?
The Hidden Stone.
I was called it Secret Garden, the Hidden Stone. I gotta tell you something, out of all my plantings in the backyard, and I spent, I won't even say, but a lot on all these materials. They are by far outperforming all the other materials. I'm just saying, pretty cool bunch. Yeah, I feel bad now. But the point, I gave an example, okay, that I was in your old town, but I think a couple things come to mind. First of all, what you just asked about is very common in many organizations and communities we work with, particularly new ones. When I say new ones, I don't want to take anything away from the credit of the staff that have been working hard before an official Parks and Rec department was started. And no, this isn't the Parks and Rec guy saying Parks and Rec, but if you look at that and you look at the opportunity to prioritize and the lack of, the limited planning about things like Old Town and providing connectivity as an example, that's going to happen. It's hard to juggle all these tasks and understand where this part is, particularly when you have new builders, new developments popping up left and right that are bringing metro districts and HOAs right to the table and meeting other expectations. It's just a lot. I see that in other communities as well. Look, one good thing, there's a lot of good things. One of the things that we do is a gap analysis. So we look at your entire community and we identify areas or zones in your community that are underserved. So that data now, Tom and team did not have yesterday, okay? They will have it after this planning is done and have the data to support recommendations for the capital program or other needs in a way that's measured. We walk your community and we look at your components of Parks and Recreation just as an example. So was there another part of that question? I think there was.
It was why and what can we expect in that for the future?
Expecting for the future, I want to make sure I get to that. So, you'll have clear gaps identified in Timnath that maybe you didn't have identified before. I think we've opened doors a little bit more, not to say, that's the world before, about ideas and conversations. We've demonstrated some cool things, I think, on the engagement standpoint that we're very interested in all parts of the community. So hopefully that momentum, continues to build. Tom, and I don't know if I want to mention, but I know you're slowly starting to staff up. I think you have a whopping 2 staff now. Okay, actually not. But you also have that vision too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're, Parks and Rec Department is growing by 2. We got another recreation coordinator and we're getting another parks irrigation specialist for the park. So, which will help hopefully get us out and doing more. So, but yeah, it's hard to believe that it'll be 2 years in March since I've been here. So, but
thank you. One of the things you mentioned in the report is this consideration for building and operating a rec center, and questions about what do you anticipate the plan will say about this? Will it identify or recommend potential locations? Someone asked, will it include pickleball courts? And is there a timeline?
So what we're doing is right now is we're gathering all the information. So it's my job to get as much information, and sometime in the near future we'll have a work session with council where we'll go over and present them the information. There was 4 different locations that the town owns that are large enough to house a community recreation center. And so we'll present those findings of those 4 locations. Some are a little more attractive than others, and some are, it just happens to be the land's big enough. And so we've taken the survey results and tried to match the community's needs and wants with what we need as a rec programming. We need gym space right now because we're newer to the game. We don't have access to the elementary schools and the schools like the other agencies have. We're fortunate enough to have Bethke Elementary. The Timnath Elementary, we don't have access because they have their own programming. and I wouldn't want to be, they have resources that works for them, and I wouldn't want to come in and try to overtake that because what they have is working. But that leaves us with only one gym. So we're coming up with a game plan. We'll present it to council, and council will decide how we move forward from there, which includes locations and community recreation centers are not cheap. And so how we're going to afford it and what kind of things. But yes, we did think of pickleball when we're designing that. We thought of everything. I mean, a trend is pools and lap pools and workout areas and fitness areas. And so, and we did some analysis using Placer AI that our community is going out. They're going to Windsor, they're going to eat for those recreational needs. And so what we need to do is we need to match what our community needs. But we also need to think what our community is going to need when it's fully grown out. So I know we're only 10 to 12,000 residents now, depending on who you talk to, making sure that we do it right the first time. And so that's kind of where we're at with that. We're in the gathering of information. We'll get it to council, and let council dictate where we go from there.
And you mentioned the couple possible, or a couple but spaces that the town owns. So is it just land that the town already owns that's being considered, or is land acquisition kind of part of the thinking process as well?
So those are the only ones that we evaluated was the land that the town owned. And so I think there's 4 locations that we looked at, and they could come back and say, you know what, we don't want to use any of those locations, we need to look elsewhere. And so that's when we would look, could do that. I don't know if we have the need. I think 2 of the 4 locations are really good locations, I would think. So it's hard to say, but we're moving forward and getting council the information of what the options are, and then we'll let them decide. So.
How many folks in the room are users of the Windsor Rec Center? I'm just curious. Yeah, I am too. I don't know if you've seen me there before, but I like to use the fitness area and shoot baskets. And so, did you get the survey that I received as a participant, which is to say they're considering expanding to another location to be named or something? So again, it gives you an idea. I think it's fantastic that there's so much appreciation and use of all types of recreation in northern Colorado. Did want to plug Tom. One thing we picked up on early, Tom regularly speaks to the other directors in northern Colorado, those that have rec centers, those that don't understand where they're trending, they're going. You mentioned Placer AI. So no, BerryDunn does not ping people's cell phones. We do not do that. We take the data that's already out there. So we have real-time data going back any day of the week, going back 7 years or more, to know where your journeys are for your residents that are going elsewhere for recreation needs. And that may be fine, that may be okay, but at least we have that data to say, well, who's currently using it, right? And here's where they're headed. I thought I'd mention that too.
Yeah, thank you. Getting into a few questions that have come in, they're sort of varied in direction, but one person asked, the bluegrass in the community parks consumes 13 million gallons of water per year. What more Colorado appropriate grass can we use instead?
Awesome question. So one of my past careers was in fact looking at turf conversion in Westminster, Colorado. Westminster is 1/3 of their land is parks and open space, and I was the director there for a decade. So we looked, a lot of water issues in Colorado, let alone Westminster. So what we try to do, and this is very common as a trend in the field, is really take a close look at spaces that need that type of turf, okay? That need that turf that Tom and team can quickly maintain at a level that's safe for the community, that's accessible to the community, but also look at the areas that don't need that, and when you look at how parks are developed, always develop with good intention. Always develop, but is that use really, is that usage meeting what was intended? So being mindful of that and balancing all the competing priorities of use and activation. Certainly some areas like active spaces do need irrigation, or there are other choices, but typically they need irrigation. The idea is to look at others. So we look at all sorts of native grasses as opportunities, but at the same time, you balance that, and having gone through that before, it is so important to work hand in hand with the community. because there's different thoughts about that. Part of it's water usage, part of it is, hey, that park's in my backyard, you know, I have concerns about what goes in there, right? But to be clear, yes, part of that is understanding what is the true use, and by the way, is that use gonna change in 5 and 10 years? As your demographics change? That's my opinion, just having gone through that. And in that case, we did steadily go through turf conversion over periods of time and analyzing where stuff's being used and where it's not.
Different angle. So thinking about the master plan that y'all are putting together for Parks and Rec, how or does this at all dovetail with the 2020 comprehensive plan that the town put together?
So what we're trying to do is we pulled some of the things that were in the comprehensive plan and made the standalone Parks and Recreation plan. But there's some of the things that will go back into that plan as far as the trails master plan, helps identifying parks. So they'll rely a lot on what we're doing now into that plan where they can focus on other areas. And so with this being a standalone plan, they'll have the groundwork for a lot of that stuff where they'll be able to focus more on updating the comprehensive plan. And that's more on the planning side. And so we'll work together with that, but we'll use components of the master plan, such as, like I said, the parks and the trails that they'll use for that. Also, we're working on coming up with, just making sure the terminology matches up. We have terminology from 3 different plans, and one of the things now that we have town staff, where we're going to match up the comprehensive plan with the PROST master plan, and eventually the transportation master plan, and making sure that they're all in sync, because that hasn't always been the case.
And is there what is the criteria for making those decisions on what kind of sticks, or, as you're trying to match these up, I guess, what's the weightiest thing that's determining some of these decisions?
I can't answer that question at this point. I have not really. So with having a new community development team, and they're going to have different expectations as far as what's going to be in the comprehensive plan, and so we'll be working with them hand in hand, and what weighs more, what weighs less. It's hard to say. They're going to be the drivers of that comprehensive plan. I know you're going to be meeting with Scott in your next meeting. And they're getting ready to kick that off here pretty soon. They're working on a contract with a consultant to move this project forward. So they're going to steer that and how they mirror those. They're definitely involved in what we're doing now as part of the steering committee. We do have them a part of that. So, but as far as how it's going to mesh and what they're going to take, we just can't say that, because that's going to be run by Scott and his redevelopment team.
My general comment on that is that, just in my experience, the more that plans across the city or town, across even different entities like school district, right, or nonprofits can share some elements of mission alignment to the extent that's possible, the better chance it is for success. So for instance, if the comp plan is talking about Parks and Rec or water conservation, ways to at least recognize that the Parks and Rec plan was completed, and acknowledge that. And I've seen cases where grants were supported, and I'm just using grants as an example, or denied because one plan didn't recognize the other. So just from my experience, I would just say the more that plans can work cohesively together and at least mention that the plans coexisted is a good thing for actually getting those plans moving forward. Tom, are you guys about to do, I think you are, you may be doing it, are you doing another town-wide survey as an example to help feed into that?
Yeah, so we do have a community survey that'll be coming out in the coming months. I think they're about dialing it in, and that community-wide survey will be coming out here, I think in the next, don't quote me on this, month or two.
We won't quote it. It's just being recorded, but we won't quote it. I'm just kidding. The point is that there's all those additional opportunities to get that input. And I know BerryDunn was charged with gathering all existing planning information to consider with our recommendations. That was part of our contract and expectations, just if you're wondering that side of it too.
Thank you for that answer. Because sometimes it feels like plans that have been made have been left behind for new plans that are being made. And so that's part of where that question, I think, comes from, as far as the comp plan comparison.
No, and we're building a cohesive team. Like, I mean, Scott, Justin, myself, we talk regularly, and Kim from Public Works, who works well in the transportation plan, has taken a heavy hand in helping me finalize the Trails Master Plan. And so, as a team, we're really growing and working with each other and complementing each other well. And I think you guys will see the cohesiveness as we move forward as a department head team. And so we're all included in the comprehensive plan. Those guys have been included in the Trails Master Plan. And I would anticipate when we do the Transportation Master Plan again, that we would continue to work with each other, because that's kind of been the MO since we got here. So that's great.
One other indication of success for me, and I have to say this for the benefit of the group today, is that at our technical advisory sessions and whatnot are inclusive of town-wide efforts. So for instance, town manager, other staff attend those, and guys, that doesn't always happen in other communities for whatever reason. People are too busy, but I want to say here it's happening, so conversations are flowing, which is usually a really good sign, at least in my experience.
Mentioned something about trails just a second ago. There's a couple questions about that. I'm going to blend these questions together. One is, what's the status or estimated completion date on Pooter Trail to Windsor? And where will the Timnath bike path be connected to Windsor and the Pooter Trail be created? Like, is there a location for that yet?
And no, I didn't write that question today.
So the remaining section of the Pooter Trail is under the charge of Larimer County. They're still working on getting the easement that they need, and they fully intend on going out to bid here in the next couple months. They're going to miss the window where they'll have to complete it in the fall, because they're going to miss the window of being able to put those abutments in. But I talked with Larimer County regularly about that. I know it's a huge priority for the town to get that done, and so we will have some wayfinding signage that'll be going up before too long. That project is out for bid right now, which will actually clearly define how to get from the underpass and I-25 all the way through town, through Community Park, and out down to where the trail currently ends. And so there's a mile section left, and it's taken 40 years to get here, and hopefully only 4 more months. But like I said, trust me, Larimer County wants to get this done as well, and they're working very hard to complete it. But they do have one easement that they have to get. So.
Question on what's happening on the east side of the reservoir, and is that part of the Parks and Rec plan?
Eventually. So what they're doing is they're building an access maintenance road around the reservoir. So for those of you that live in the Wild Wing subdivision, they built that access road a couple of years ago before I got here. We wound up putting a trail on top of that. What they're doing right now, they're doing 2 things. One, the contractor who built our trail is GLH. They were actually contracted by the ditch company to build that access road. And so what they're doing is they're restabilizing their banks after that neighbor went ahead and pulled those trees out and destabilized the bank. And so we went in, and also it was it wasn't a clear where's the ditch company property versus where the landowner property was. So we went through and we had it surveyed by multiple survey companies to make sure we had it right. And then we went ahead and the ditch company went in and clearly marked it, and they're building that access road on their property. That'll eventually become a trail. I'm hesitant to put a trail on there right away because I don't want to dump people out onto Colorado Boulevard with no shoulder. And so the town needs to figure out what we're going to do. So the Public Works team and Transportation team needs to figure out what they're going to do with the Colorado Boulevard because it doesn't make any sense to build a trail out there just to dump people out on a dangerous road. So they're doing that, and then also some of that stuff too is they're taking a lot of the old sediment out of there, and they're taking it off, and GLH is using it at another job site. So they're also removing some dirt from years of sediment coming in, so they can gain back some of their volume that they need for the reservoir. So they cut it pretty close this year with meeting the demand of what they needed for that reservoir because there was no rain.
Talked about a lot of engagement from the town on this process, highlights from engagement, things that people were kind of most interested in, most excited about. We've already talked about the rec center being one of those things. Is there a way to say of all the possible outcomes, assuming we can't do it all, and certainly won't do it all at once, as has already been mentioned, what's most likely to come and maybe most likely in the nearest future?
So I have all kinds of things that I'd like to do first, but it's not about me. Like I said, what we'll do is we'll have a list of action items. That's one of the things that we've hired BerryDunn to do, is to give us a whole list of action items of what we do, and then it's going to be what can we afford and how can we afford it. And so some of the things that we'll have will be some low-hanging fruit stuff that we can get done pretty quickly, but some of that stuff is going to take a lot of planning. You can't just go in overnight and build a trail or buy open space or stuff. So I think in the end, once we have those listed action items, it's what can we afford and what can we get done right away. Some of it may take some additional planning to make sure we're ready when opportunities arise to do certain things. But I think everything in here is going to be important. It's important to somebody. We hear more about certain things, so maybe those will rise up to the top. I mean, overwhelmingly, trail connection, recreation center, open space, those are up to the top, you know, and so I would imagine that council's really good at listening, and I think those things will rise to the top. So.
And what you will have sort of towards the end of this is typically we provide, we're charged with sort of a 10-year vision and a 10-year plan. So based on community engagement, based on our financial analysis, based on partners availability, all those wonderful things, we provide a short-term, like a 1 to 3 year, 4 to 5 or 6, and then beyond 6 years sort of recommendations, and we tier those up. And we are very specific as to different areas. So an area probably will be open space and trails. And so in open space and trails, what are the top priorities, and what would we recommend the timing of those happening due to a variety of factors?
This one's just fun, I think. Have you included cricket pitches in the plan? Because it's a popular and upcoming sport that kids enjoy.
No. Did not hear that at all in the public engagement, did you?
Spaces are being developed. I'm just gonna say, sometimes it just takes a champion. In fact, that's how a lot of this stuff's done, but that would be pretty cool.
No, actually, when I first got into Parks and Rec, I was working for the city of Louisville, and the rec center was up top, and they built a pitch down below the rec center, so I've seen it. But no one has brought that to my attention at this point. But
you are.
Let's make sure we write that down.
I saw one of the first topspin courses in Colorado built, and that team going on to win the world champion. And that was nowhere on the radar for that community, so I've seen it happen in places, stuff like that.
Yeah. So someone once wrote, and I quoted this at our last forum, place matters. No one lives in a vacuum, disembodied or isolated from ecologic necessity. Existence requires location. Life has geography. Our contexts of land and culture matter for shaping who we are and who we might become. So from the perspective of Parks and Rec, how can the Parks and Recreation Department help us recall and continue to create a sense of place and identity for our growing and prosperous community?
I just think the true nature of parks brings people out to get to nature, to really find a sense of belonging, and when you can create those spaces that create memories, a lot of memories happen in parks. And so finding ways to bring people to parks, making sure that parks and open spaces are accessible, and making sure that it's evenly distributed is something that as a Parks and Recreation Department we should be doing, is making sure that it's accessible for all. Like I said, a lot of my memories growing up as a kid is in the parks, and trying to create those memories for my kids and my grandkids, and so, and when you go to the community where you are, those are your places, and so it should be warm and welcoming by nature. And so I think the short answer is it's very important to bring people together and making sure that they're accessible.
I'm gonna, steal that quote if I can and put it in my network and say that was an outcome of tonight's meeting. If whoever wrote that doesn't mind, I think that's awesome. My comment is, if you, I just dedicated my life to Parks and Recreation, and I won't go off a tangent on that, but I'll say if you think about your memories, and look at your photos, chances are they're gonna be in an outdoor setting, a rec facility, a wedding, a funeral, gatherings, you name it. And so I continue to challenge communities to say, where are these places? I get it, there's a lot of needs. We're balancing a lot, but is there an adequate level of these services, these opportunities for people to enjoy those memories, to make memories, to recreate as they can? Because I grew up in areas that didn't have that. I grew up in South Chicago. You can see the way I say it, you can almost tell. Comes out sometimes. 27 years there. I haven't lived there in a long time, but I didn't have any of that stuff. So it's thinking about that. And I think what's so special to me about Timnath is that you're doing so many things so well, like your beautiful parks, but like around your policies on development, requiring connections to trails and being thoughtful about that, and openness and access. Communities cannot do that in other cities. They can't. And so what you guys have going on there to continue that path, I think is really cool. I heard it firsthand from your residents, and I said it earlier. I don't want to be overly redundant, but your community said, when I think of the brand, I think of how I connect to Timnath, it's at gatherings like we attended. Of course, you could say, well, yeah, they were at the event. Well, yeah, they were at the event.
Thank you. Well, one last question. Is there currently open or unused grant money available for local use, for use in this Parks and Rec?
Without having any projects in mind, that's not something that we've really looked at this point. But there's lots of agencies that have grant money available. It's just matching them up with the project. And so one of the things when I got here is we put a lot of the projects on hold, waiting for the outcomes of this master plan. But definitely we'll be looking for those things in order to provide these open spaces and the trails, because as we grow as a community, there's going to be the need for grant funding is going to be very important in order to accomplish a lot of the projects that we want to accomplish. So, have I looked at anything specifically? No. Where I came from on the western slope, if we didn't have grant money, the projects weren't built. And so I'm aware of that situation. Like I said, I haven't matched them up with any projects yet, because we kind of pumped the brakes when I got here to complete this master plan, to come up with a good plan moving forward, and making sure that the priorities of the plans that we're moving forward meet the needs of the community. So.
And I'll just add, the short answer is yeah. I mean, there are plenty of opportunities, and part of that is having, I'll say it again, the metrics, the community support from the engagement findings, well thought, just information for staff to be able to present that to a granting agency. Where I was at, Colorado does have one of the best states for alternative ways to get funding, lottery funds, you name it, for open space, particularly in outdoor recreation. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, but it's first making sure Tom and team have the opportunity to get what they need to get to that table. And then certainly the voice of the community like this to help push that over the edge and say, yeah, we need these things.
Thank you, guys. I could give them a thanks one more time tonight. Super grateful for the conversation. As a reminder, before you head out, our February forum here at the Town Hall is Thursday on the 20th at 6:30 p.m. And we want to thank you all for showing up and coming together for Timnath. Have a great night.
Thank you guys so much. Hope to see you again. Maybe at the Windsor Rec Center. Just half the room. I forgot that's how they listen.